My friend Tanaka worked security at a department store in Shibuya until last month. He quit without explanation. It took 3 drinks before he told me why. Every night at 2:47 a.m., the elevator on the 3rd floor would activate. Not unusual, old buildings have quirks, but this elevator had been disconnected from maintenance 2 weeks prior. The first night he heard it, Tanaka assumed the repair crew had reconnected. He radioed the maintenance office, no response. Walking to the elevator bank, he saw the indicator lights moving. Floor 2, floor 3, floor 4. Then it stopped. The doors opened with their familiar ding. Inside stood a young woman in a department store uniform from the 1980s. Her name tag read, Customer Service. She smiled and asked, "Which floor, please?" Tanaka couldn't move. Her skin was pale, too pale, and her eyes, they were completely black. "Which floor?" she repeated, her smile never wavering. He managed to whisper. She pressed the button with a finger that seemed wrong somehow. Too long, too thin. As the elevator descended, she stared at him without blinking. "I've been waiting," she said softly. 37 years, waiting for someone to ask for the ground floor. The elevator reached the ground floor. The doors didn't open. It kept going down. Basement 1, basement 2, basement 3. Floors that didn't exist in that building. Finally it stopped. The doors opened to reveal another department store floor. But this one was from decades ago. Mannequins in 1980s fashion, dust-covered displays, darkness beyond the service light. "This is your stop," Yuki said, her voice now coming from everywhere at once. Tanaka found himself stepping out, unable to resist. The last thing he remembered was the elevator doors closing behind him. He woke up 3 hours later on the security office floor. The disconnected elevator was still disconnected, but in his pocket was an old department store employee ID. Yuki Tanaka, date of hire March 15, 1987. His last name and a date 37 years ago. He quit the next day, but sometimes he still hears elevator music in his dream. Sato-san managed a department store in Osaka for 23 years. He knew every sound, every echo, every shadow, until the night he heard his own voice over the PA system. It was 11:30 p.m. on a Tuesday. He was doing his final walkthrough before locking up. The cleaning crew had left an hour ago. The building was empty. That's when the announcement came. "Attention shopper." His blood ran cold. It was his voice, but he wasn't speaking. "The store will be closing in 30 minutes. He ran to the PA room on the 4th floor. Locked, just as he'd left it. But the announcement continued from speakers throughout the building. "Please make your final selections and proceed to the checkout counter." Sato-san checked every floor, every department, empty, silent, except for his voice echoing through the darkness. Then he heard something else, footsteps, slow, deliberate, moving through the women's clothing section. He crept toward the sound, flashlight in hand. Between the racks of clothes, he saw shapes moving. People, but not quite people. Their movements were wrong, jerky, like marionettes. They browsed the rack, holding up clothes to themselves. But when he shined his light on them, they had no faces, just smooth skin where features should be. The announcement came again, 15 minutes until closing. The faceless shoppers turned toward him in unison. They began walking toward the escalator, carrying their selection. Sato-san followed at a distance, mesmerized by terror. They formed a perfect line at checkout counter 3. The register turned on by itself. One by one, they scanned their items. But the scanner made no sound, and the items had no tag. "Thank you for shopping with us," his voice announced. "The store is now closed." The faceless shoppers walked toward the exit door. Doors that had been locked for hours, but opened for them. As the last one disappeared into the night, Sato-san noticed something on the counter. Receipt paper with purchases listed. But the items weren't clothes or accessories. They were names, dates, addresses. And at the bottom of the receipt, his name, his address, tomorrow's date. Kimura worked in visual merchandising at a high-end department store in Tokyo. Her job was simple: dress the mannequins for seasonal displays. She loved the work until she found the room on sub-basement level 2. It happened during inventory week in November. She was looking for vintage mannequins mentioned in old store records. The basement levels were a maze of storage rooms and forgotten departments. Following a hand-drawn map from the 1970s, She found a door marked "Display Storage, Authorized Personnel Only." The key from the security office fit perfectly. Inside was a long, narrow room filled with mannequins, dozens of them standing in perfect rows. But these weren't like the modern fiberglass models upstairs. These were crafted with incredible detail, almost lifelike. Their faces showed subtle expressions, their poses seemed natural. As she walked between the rows, something felt wrong. The mannequin's eyes seemed to follow her movement. Impossible, she told herself, but the feeling persisted. At the back of the room, she found a desk with old employee files. The papers were yellowed, ink faded, but she could make out names, dates, and photographs. Store employees from the 1960s through the 1980s. Each file stamped with the same red mark: exceptional service, permanent position. She looked up at the nearest mannequin. Its face matched the photograph in her hand. Heart racing, she checked another file, another mannequin. Perfect match. One by one, she compared the photographs to the figures around her. Every mannequin was a former employee. Suddenly she heard footsteps behind her. She turned, but the room was empty. Or was it? Some of the mannequins had moved, slightly subtly but moved. They were no longer in perfect rows. They had turned to face her. Kimura backed toward the door, files clutched in her trembling hand. As she reached for the handle, a voice whispered from somewhere in the dark, "Welcome to the team." She ran, leaving the files scattered on the floor. The next morning, she quit without giving notice. But sometimes, late at night, she receives calls from the store. No one speaks, but she can hear the sound of footsteps. Footsteps that click like plastic on concrete. Hayashi worked the late shift in the cosmetics department of Matsuzakaya in Nagoya. Most nights were quiet, just cleaning displays and restocking inventory. But 3 weeks ago, she gained a regular customer. Every night at 1:15 a.m., exactly 15 minutes after the store closed, a woman would appear at the cosmetics counter. She never came through the doors, she was just there. The first time it happened, Hayashi thought it was a mistake. Maybe someone had hidden in a bathroom stall until after closing. The woman was elegant, wearing a vintage Chanel suit from the 1950s. Her makeup was flawless, but somehow dated. "I need foundation," the woman said in perfect Japanese. "Something to cover imperfection." Hayashi showed her the latest product, explaining coverage and shade. The woman listened intently, nodding at each recommendation. But when Hayashi looked up from the display, the woman was gone. No sound of footsteps, no goodbye. Vanished. The next night, 1:15 a.m., she returned. Same request. "I need foundation to cover imperfection." Same demonstration, same sudden disappearance. By the 5th night, Hayashi was expecting her. She had the foundation samples ready, the sales pitch memorized. But this time, something was different. The woman's makeup was smudged. Dark circles under her eyes showed through the powder. Her lipstick had faded, revealing pale, colorless lips. "The imperfections are getting worse," she whispered. Hayashi leaned closer and saw what the woman was trying to hide. Beneath the cracking foundation, her skin was gray, mottled, decaying. "I used to work here," the woman said, noticing Hayashi's expression. 1957 to 1962. "I loved this counter, loved helping women feel beautiful. But no makeup can fix what's wrong with me now." Her face began to shift, the careful makeup application sliding away like melting wax. Underneath was something that had been dead for 60 years. "But you understand," she said, reaching across the counter. "You know how important it is to look perfect." Her finger touched Hayashi's cheek, and where she touched, the skin went cold. Hayashi looked in the counter mirror. Her reflection showed a gray handprint on her face, a mark that no amount of foundation could cover. She still works at the cosmetics counter, but now she understands why the night shift pays so well. And every night at 1:15, she waits for her regular customer. This story comes from my cousin who worked at a department store in rural Hokkaido. The building was old, constructed in the 1960s when the town was prosperous. Over the decades, sections had been closed, floors abandoned. By 2019, only 3 of the original 7 floors remained operational. But according to the elevator, all 7 floors still exist. My cousin discovered this during a particularly slow Wednesday night. Bored and curious, he pressed the button for the 6th floor. a floor that had been sealed off for 15 years. To his surprise, the elevator rose. The doors opened to reveal a fully operational department floor. But it was wrong. The layout was different from what he remembered. The products were brands that no longer exist. Prices were in old yen amounts from decades ago. And there were customers, people in clothing styles from different eras. A woman in a 1970s kimono examining ceramic tea set. A man in a 1980s business suit browsing electronics that predated smartphones. Children in school uniforms from the 1990s playing with toys he'd forgotten existed. None of them acknowledged his presence. They shopped, browsed, examined products, but never purchased anything. And none of them ever left. My cousin walked through the department, fascinated and terrified. At the back of the floor, found a photo display. Valued customers through the years read the sign. Hundreds of photographs, customers from the store's opening in 1963. And every face in those photos was shopping on the 6th floor. Suddenly, a store employee approached him, an elderly woman in a uniform style that hadn't been used in 20 years. "Can I help you find something?" he asked pleasantly. Her name tag read Suzuki, 45 years of service. "I'm just looking," he managed to say. "Of course," she smiled. "Take your time. Once you're here, you have all the time in the world." Her eyes were kind but empty, like windows with no rooms behind them. My cousin backed toward the elevator, panic rising. But when he reached where the elevator should be, there was only a wall. No elevator, no buttons, no way out. "Don't worry," Suzuki said, suddenly beside him. "Everyone feels lost at first, but eventually you find exactly what you're looking for." He woke up 3 hours later on the ground floor, security shaking his shoulder. They said he'd been sleepwalking, found him standing by the elevator at 4 a.m., but in his pocket was a business card. Suzuki's card, from the 6th floor customer service desk. The floor that doesn't exist, with the appointment time written on the back. "Tomorrow night, same time, 6th floor,